So I'll start with an example. These are examples tonight I will provide to you are situations that I encounter with Jasmine and how I handled them. Okay. So this particular example, actually it is the last chapter. It is the last page of the book that's coming 2030. Okay, this one is titled A Story of Redemption. So it starts with 2 quotes. Every chapter, like some typical books like these, start with quotes. Every child you encounter is a divine appointment. West Stafford. Children are the hands by which we take hold of heaven. By Henry Ward Beecher. When I started looking for quotes to fit the chapter, I thought to myself, wow, these people get it. They understand. I don't know if they know conscious parenting, but how they see. I did some research on some of these pundits, poets, intellectuals, and I thought to myself, they understand what conscious parenting is like. And maybe not because they were trained in conscious parenting, but there's something about whether it's conscious parenting. It's really about tapping into your humanity, whether you are a parent or in any relationship, in any context. But in any case, a story of redemption. We'd like to end this journey with a story about a situation with our daughter that was ultimately a lesson in consciousness for my wife and I. I had just woken up from my nap and decided to go to the kitchen to get a snack. Coming out of my bedroom, I walked down the hallway towards the kitchen. At the end of the hallway leading to the dining area, towards my right, I see my daughter, who was 5 years old at the time, sitting on the floor with a pair of scissors in her right hand. Strewn all over the floor, surrounding her was a sea of long, thin leaves from our Dracaena morginata plant. In the planter itself, remained erect was the stalk of the plant that stood 5 feet tall, appearing as naked as can be. It was clear that she had successfully clipped off every single dressing leaf from the plant. I stood frozen, taking the time to process the moment, which included my shock and awe. On the outside, I may have seemed amiably calm. On the inside, I was filled with thoughts, perhaps not as calm, but it was in the way that she looked at me that I decided in that moment to offer her what I felt would have been the more suitable response: dignified repose. It provided me with enough time to conjure up a plan, but the plan entailed action that would enact learning how to be conscious for myself and for my daughter. I wanted to teach perspective, so I continued walking towards the kitchen, took out one medium-sized pot and filled it halfway up with water. I picked up the pot, walked over to where she was, and sat down in front of her. I took one of the leaves, mindfully and gently placed it into the pot of water. I took a second leaf and did the same. And then I took as many as I could reach and placed them into the pot. But before I placed the leaf into the pot of water, I attempted to attach it back onto the stalk. So before I placed the first leaf into the pot of water, I attempted to attach it back onto the stalk. But as I let go, the leaf dropped onto the floor. My intention was, by demonstrating this act, I wanted to impress on her an understanding and awareness of the fundamental law of connectivity. Now, although my daughter would not have understood the principle of dependent origination. So my daughter would not have understood the principle of dependent origination at such a young age. I had only yearned to plant a seed of compassion or awareness in her heart and mind with the hopes that it would one day reach her spirit. The principle of dependent origination is defined in this way. All things and everything is dependent on everything else for its existence. The principle of dependent origination, once more, is defined as all things and everything is dependent on everything else for its existence. As it turned out, she learned not necessarily the concept, but on the very next day, while preparing her lunch, she approached me and asked me for a bowl of water. As often the case in this situation, my action mantra with my daughter is to comply. So I complied. And I do so because I want to see what she may have learned or what I could be learning. She took that bowl of water and continued outside. Curious, I walked over to the dining nook and peeked through the window, where I could see her sitting in the front lawn underneath a tree. I watched as she proceeded to place the bowl of water on the ground and to mindfully pick up dead leaves, and she put it into the bowl of water. She then picked up twigs and placed them into the bowl. And then I see her pick up stones, which she put into the bowl. Each and every time we learn from our parenting, the child that we learn about ourselves is always a story of redemption. We have many opportunities that they provide that allows for us to learn more.
To rise to the occasion.
Each and every time we mess up in life, it is an opportunity for us to learn about ourselves. Consider how many times we may have done the same. We all have cut the leaves of our own Dracaena moorthanata plant in our own way. Each and every time a child, quote unquote, messes up, it is an opportunity for us to learn. Just be cautious about interpreting our mess up as a problem when it can present as more of a solution. The child will be okay, for she is just sitting on the floor with a pair of scissors, surrounded by leaves, and smiling at me. She is living her life. We just have to learn how to live as she does. Just remember that there are parts of the child where we cannot determine how she is to act, behave, or live. But when we can create for ourselves the opportunity to be present around her, and she is kind, it becomes presently aware because we are. The things that she will encounter in life are those things that she sees, hears, and feels will all have meaning. Whether it is talking to another human being or noticing a dead leaf on the ground. Her ability to find value in these things will only ensure for her and all of us a better tomorrow. I found out later, I think it was a week afterwards, this is what Vivi told me, and I had not known. She was cutting off the leaves so she can put it on our Christmas tree to decorate. And this is what I have found, whether it's with Jasmine or in therapy with other kids, the things that they do, I often wonder. I like to wonder along with them. It prevents me from reacting. And it helps me to be curious why she would cut the curtains, which she did one time, from the window. It's all play, nothing more than that. She was just creating patterns, nothing more than that, right? Like the writing on the wall, literally, right? So everything she does is just a moment of wonder.
I often find, at least with me, that sometimes our lack of wonder as an adult, as a parent, sometimes a burden adult, right? Like with so much on our plates, we have lost it sometimes more than just a little. And in a way, if we're not mindful that we have lost it, we impose and help the child lose it too. In how we respond, or when we assume there's malice, or we assume there's intention to provoke us or disrespect us, whatever it is that we put in our heads. First, we're not actually accurate at all. But two is we're imposing the burden of adulthood in a child. When we can learn from them to retain our wonder or grow our wonder, when we can join that world and see the world through the eyes of innocence and joy and play and curiosity versus the day in and day out, the gray and black day in and day out that we often choose to live in. And I like to follow up with the story. And what I'm sharing is superficial, but I think it just enhances a little bit the depth of this profound experience. That plant was like in one leg already. And I said, okay, now this is really dead, right? Like when I went shopping, he was supposed to be watching her and he takes a nap. So I come home, I was very shocked, but it was already in one leg. I said, okay, I'm just going to throw out this plant, but I didn't get around to it. And it grew back so beautiful. Like she saved the plant, right? It had many, many years after that. And the reality is she never cut another plant again. Like we didn't tell her not to. She never cut another plant again. She cut the curtains because that's a different thing. So without saying don't, stop, that's bad behavior, or making her feel guilty, you hurt the plant. right? With the words that we infuse and violate the child with, I could make her feel shame. But the shame doesn't bring growth. Shame doesn't bring learning. It doesn't bring continual wonder. And without a word, she never cut another plant again. How is that possible? But she understood that the leaf could not go back, that she caused the leaf not to be able to go back, right? In some level. So I like to continue that because you get the regular things that you want them to have and more. Can I share a quick story? Make room. Okay. We started meditation practice pretty early with her, and Khan, every time that he would put her to bed, I'm thankful for the roof in the house because it keeps us safe, like things like that. And they would do a gratitude every evening. She went beyond a regular daily thing, and I always wonder, where did that come from? How the explosion of discernment and understanding and perspective. So one night she said, I'm thankful for the tires. Like, we never talked about the car, right? Like, the car's in the garage, it's not even visible. We started very basic things that we could see in the room. And then we asked why, and she goes, because it allows us to get somewhere where we want to go. Like, for a really small child to make that connection, it's very powerful to see that she would go beyond us. She right now is beyond us in her understanding and perspective and compassion. So
A child's intention to me is often perhaps naive. A lot of it is actually innocent, and a lot more is actually pure. An adult's intention is unconscious. We like to think that we're intentional, and we can be, because we have a brand of consciousness too that may not be as natural and spontaneous as a child would be. Um, that just reminded me of something. I wanted to talk to you about this concept called the conscious parenting effect. I'm going to read to you about it. It's related to what I just said. Okay. The conscious parenting effect describes how the parent's conscious experiences and influence may have a powerful effect on maintaining the child's conscious awareness of herself in the world. By being mindful, the parent creates a framework of attention that helps the child to preserve her awareness. I'll say that again. By being mindful, the parent creates a framework of attention that helps the child to preserve her awareness. To be clear, the parent is not teaching the child awareness because the child is already aware. Pause for dramatic effect. And then, but the conscious parent intentionally produces moment by moment experiences of awareness or socially conscious contexts that helps to exacerbate her awareness. I discovered that very early on for myself as I'm observing Jasmine, where at one time we were heading out to go to the store. I take her hand, she walks out and she looks up and she sees a bird. And I hear cheep, cheep, cheep. And I stop and look up. What I learned was that it was so instant. That awareness, it need not be activated,
created.
by choice. It just is. There is no decision. So for me to help, again, for me to help preserve it, I had no choice but to be aware myself. Because if I am unaware, as she continues to grow and mature, she will become what I am. So we want to preserve that awareness, right? We don't want to create it. It is already there. We don't have to do the work. It is already there. Watch them. Watch us how they respond to the world. There is a story that is associated with that. To that person who wanted real life examples, here we go. When my child was 5 years old, before I continue, I debated whether I should put this in the book. I actually did when I started writing the book 3 years ago. In the first year, I put the story in the book, and then I got rid of it because I had concerns. So I'm not asking you or encouraging you to do what I did because it's illegal. Did I say that out?
And you cut that out before you cut that out before you put in the okay.
Here we go. Illegal. Don't do it. But read. There's more to it. So please listen.
I'm scared.
Carefully.
I don't know what he's about to share. So
my child was 5 years old. She asked me if we could go to Walmart because she needed colored pencils. When we got to Walmart, I decided to wait in front of the store between the male and female bathrooms, in Walmart. Okay. I proceeded to give her $20 and told her I would wait here for her while she went to get the pencils. Waiting for some time, I routinely shifted my gaze back and forth at both ends of the store. Like so. Oh, goodness. Here we go.
he told me this afterwards. Just saying.
I routinely shifted my gaze back and forth at the end of the store where the entrance exit doors were located to assure that she was not going to walk out without me. Moments later, I see her approach a cashier with her colored pencils in hand. At the time, my daughter was a very petite 5-year-older weighing 35 pounds, who could only barely see the checkout conveyor belt on her tippy toes. As I was watching the entire transaction play out, I was amazed that she was able to understand the process of putting the item on the conveyor belt, to greet the cashier, to pay for the items, to wait and receive the change, to offer a farewell greeting to the cashier as she was leaving, and ultimately found her way back to me. She had never done this by herself before, and I never instructed her on how to perform any of these tasks. Consider that she would first have to find the area of the store where the art supplies were located. Walmart for a 5-year-older can be a very large place. So this would pose a challenge. And even if she was oriented and familiar with the general area where the colored pencils were located, she would have to find the specific aisle, the specific placement of the item itself in search. If she ended up finding the exact location and exact aisle and the item in the aisle, how would she attain the supplies if they were placed too high for her to reach? And on the way in search of the colored pencils, she would have to maintain some level of focus to accomplish this feat, because a 5-year-old can easily get distracted.
And orientation, like how to come back, right? The map.
Overall, there was all of that I had just mentioned, and much more to consider or be concerned about on my part. I trusted that if she did not know where it was located, one of two things were going to happen. Knowing Jasmine, she would continue walking around forever until it was found, or she would ask someone for help. Although I was quite nervous about the entire situation, I had confidence that she would achieve her goal and faith that it had already happened. Not just it's going to happen. I had faith that it already happened. It was just a matter of when. Granted, we cannot just base our parenting on faith alone. But what I refer to as faith has more to do with the understanding of the phenomenal occurrence we call adaptation. She was going to find it because she had no choice. She was born to adapt. In other words, even if she could not find her way, she would find a way to achieve her mission. I was relying on what we call in psychology observational knowledge. Observational knowledge that a child has accumulated as a result of observational learning. The child has built-in natural impulse for learning and learns about her world by taking in the experiences surrounding her. The human child learns how to respond to life by observing how the adult parents interact with the world. A big part of the child's developmental process is dependent on her ability to keenly observe and learn. Therefore, she is born with the inherent capacity to not just learn, but learn at a dramatic rate. It would make sense that by 5, my daughter had observed the process of shopping hundreds of times. She has not just seen me do shopping, but she has also seen people around me do it as well, giving her plenty of exposure. The first time I had her perform a task similar to the Walmart experiment was when she was 4. We were at Java Moon Cafe having lunch. In the middle of eating, she looked over to me and asked if we could have dessert. And I said yes. I handed her a $10 bill, then asked, "Can you please get me a cookie?" She took the money and went to purchase 2 cookies. But this process of independence was natural to her because it really began even earlier back. When my daughter was 3 years old, we were at a restaurant. After I gave my order to the waitress, she asked me what my daughter would like to eat. I turned over to my daughter, which prompted her to say, "Macaroni and cheese, please." That was the cutest thing. I did not suggest that my daughter should speak up. But the day when she first began to express verbal language, I listened. It was in the way that I listened and paid attention that she recognized her voice. So of course, by 5, Walmart was just a walk in the park for her. It was natural It was natural for her to appear independent.
It is so rare that we provide independence for our child because we think they're not capable. And that is like a disease in us, in a civilization. Jasmine is 15 now. I took her to the doctor for annual, and she had to have a second half of a vaccine that she started before, and another vaccine. And Jasmine went in by herself with the nurse. And the nurse, I stayed in the waiting room, and the nurse came out and goes, "Oh, she has to get half of this vaccine. What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Did you ask Jasmine?" And the nurse looked at me like I had committed the crime of the century, letting a 15-year-old decide her health. I said, "Ask her, tell her what you have to do, and whatever she says is the way we're going to go." So she went, and then Jasmine came out and goes, "Yeah, Mom, I got 2 shots." She made the choice that she felt that was right for her. She was educated about her choices, and she made the choice. So it continues on. It's that even at 15, we're still making decisions for our children. And it's such a novel idea to allow the child to already take responsibility for their health. You know? So it's the same thing over and over and over again. They know much more than we realize. And the learning of watching us is way more powerful than anything we say, right? So sometimes I have people saying, I have friends saying, "My child is not eating their vegetables," and no, and they're trying to come up with all this schema and scheming and creating so much work to make the child eat vegetables. And then I asked my friend and said, "Do you eat vegetables?" She goes, "No, it's yucky." I said, "No more," right? Like, okay. They learn not to eat vegetables. So much is a reflection of us, and we don't even see it, you know. So,
Talking about see, what there is to see and hear. Everything that we notice by our eyes, we see in the child reflects to us our vision. Everything we notice by our ears, we hear coming from the child reflects to us our voice. And every action that we notice by our awareness, we recognize coming from the child reflects our attitude. She is what we are and becomes what she learns from us.
not what we say. Well, sometimes, yeah, but not in that way.
I think the perspective up to this point provides all of us, and maybe all of those out there listening to this, why there's such a great emphasis in conscious parenting about the parent evolving, needing to evolve. Yeah. So when I've said, I've done many of these talks before, and I say during peace, I really do not say anything whatsoever. I'm silent. It doesn't matter what she brings up. My child, since the age of 2 to now 15, on the way to school today, she's just got a talking about her, went on about her art. I just sat there in utter silence. But silence is not the version of quiet that we think about, which is like emptiness, not doing, not helping, not, you know. Silence here is, again, remember, listening. It is pure listening. Okay.
It's engaging listening, not I'm silent and I'm disengaged. I'm dreaming about something else. I'm tuning the child out. That's the opposite. We're being really active, listening and present. They know the difference.
And there's been talk before, based on the talks I have done, talks by the audience. I still remember this mother said, so why you just sit there and do nothing? Isn't our job to teach the child? I just got done talking about how we can teach the child. There are different ways to teach the child, right? Mm-hmm. So talking about seeing. So you're starting to see the world through the lens of a conscious parent because you yourself are becoming a conscious parent, right? Here's a story that I observe. I once saw a child of about 3 years old pushing a toy shopping cart around the house. As the child inched closer to a wall, I heard his parents say, "Junior, watch out! You're gonna hit the wall." As it turned out, the child hit the wall. To which the mother responded with, "Whoopsie! I told you so, and you didn't listen, did ya?" This seems from outward appearance like a dotingly understanding mother who was concerned about the child being hurt. Although I do not doubt that this parent is unable to be caring, however, what was in doubt was whether it was really a legitimate concern for the child. And what we mean by this is that sometimes the parent's concern reeks to me of insecurity. Okay? The problem is that the strong need for control can override our capacity for real empathy, patience, and even love. So in the case of the parent, I'm skipping down the story. In the case of the parent whose child was pushing the shopping cart, we suggest this. We recommend this to all of you when you see a child who is about to, quote unquote, literally or metaphorically hit the wall. Please let the child hit the wall. Let them hit the wall.
They're learning the environment. Yeah.
After hitting the wall, the child was also able to maneuver the cart away from the wall by himself. Even a toddler at age 3 can figure out how to navigate through life in his own way. So whenever we do encounter the same situation or similar situation, just sit back and enjoy the child experience. And enjoyment makes for a good percent of effective parenting. In the case of the parent for this child, enjoying the experience means to enjoy the play, enjoy the child, enjoy the shopping cart, and especially enjoy the wall. Because that particular wall can become for the child a metaphor for life that represents all things that he will encounter and need to overcome. Our overarching message to the parent, to all parents, is this: be wary about our response to the child, no matter how quote unquote parental or compassionate it seems, because sometimes it is not the wall that is the thing preventing the child from moving forward.
It is up to you if you want parenting to be a struggle or you want to make your life much more meaningful and connected. Control will never give you meaning and connection. Control drives the child away. It doesn't teach what you think it teaches, and it only makes them to find different ways to learn on their own. When 2 years ago, Jasmine was 13, we bought her an e-bike. Now, for me, it wasn't very smart that I decided to buy an e-bike in late October, right? So she was normally very excited about the e-bike. So she wanted to ride her bike to school. Now we have 2 huge hills, and there was ice in the ground. There was snow in the ground, and it was really, really cold. So she wanted to ride her bike to school, and we said yes. Can you imagine how that bike ride at 20 miles an hour downhill looked like? Or 30? Right? She was slipping and sliding, and Con was driving the car along to make sure if something happened, he was there to support her if she needed help. I could not watch. I'm much weaker in this conscious parenting than Con is. More neurotic, I guess. So Con watched, and then there was a point that she hit a snowbank, flew over the handlebars, and landed in the land. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So after that, she walked her bike, right? She walked her bike to the rest of the way to the school.
Yeah, before that, she fell and slipped on the street 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Then what you are describing, she flipped over the bike and landed on her head. Mm-hmm. She has a helmet. So we're not entirely incompetent parents. I followed her. And then after that, she fell 2 more times. Mm-hmm. So when we got to the school, I pulled next to her and I asked her, how did it go? And her response was this: Dad, I'm going to need you to take the bike home and pick me up. Mm-hmm. I said, okay.
And she never asked again to ride the bike in bad weather. She already knew. I didn't have to nag and nag and nag 1,000 times, and they keep asking, right? She learned on her own, and she knew. Now, yeah, we take more risks than most parents would. We understand that. But it has paid off 1,000-fold. She learned on her own what it meant to ride a bike, and that's a bike that can go quite fast. It's a motorcycle. It's not a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm. That's our version of tough love, right? But she would learn so much faster through the natural consequences than me sitting there. And she knew I wasn't going to preach to her anyway. Mm-hmm. Than me sitting there. It's dangerous out there. You're gonna fall. I knew it was icy. There was literal ice on there because we drove. I just got home. Yeah. It was the night before, and it was just in the morning, and we could see that there was ice. But I think it was important. The more she fell down, the better. I needed to see that. It is very important for her to get hurt. And especially at the moment when she hit a bank and flipped over. She literally flipped over and landed on her back. She got up, got back on the bike, and kept going. I'm going to address this part about that parent with the shopping cart. She said, I told you so. Remember that part of it? The type of language sometimes when I hear, whether it's in the session where I have parents talking to their kids or at Walmart, I like to eavesdrop like this as they're standing next to me. And because I just want to know what's going on out there in the realm of parenting. The "I told you so" response from a parent is not a mantra that we want to repeat. Okay, because it fails to reflect any sort of understanding. However, it is a form of judgment, and enough of it can eventually kill the soul. Say it out loud. Say it to yourself. I told you so, but you didn't listen, did you? Say that to yourself. Imagine your parents saying that to you, or imagine your boss saying that to you, right? Remember, language does matter to the child if we don't think it matters to us. So as a parent, we need to watch our language. In many cases, This type of language would be more detrimental to the child's beingness than the actual cuss words that we try so hard to prevent the child from learning. Shame on us, huh? Boy, are we deluded, right? Yeah. I gotta back up there. Sometimes I can be harsh. There is no place in parenting where sarcasm is used kindly to make our point during childhood moments that just simply ask for your attention. There is no place in parenting where sarcasm is used kindly to make our point during childhood moments that simply asks for our attention. Everything the child does not need your sarcasm, doesn't need your response, doesn't even need you to teach them. It just needs your attention. Once again, people out there, I'm not saying that you shouldn't teach your child. Sure, you are always teaching your child. It's not during those moments when you open your mouth, you're thinking that's the time is to teach. It is to teach. No. The moment you step into their bedroom in the morning and they stare at you, that is the lesson. They're always watching you. I would rather you not say anything whatsoever than say anything at all. Because we're dangerous. Right? Although last week I said the dangerous animal on this planet is the child, right? Because they see through us. They see into our souls, right? All right. A response to that, Vivian?
I just keep thinking of examples of how it is always wonder that we don't teach her directly by words, and yet she rises to the occasion every time. Like it's just amazing. But there's too many examples. We can't cover them all. But I would like you to share. I love that example. It wasn't with Jasmine, so I think it's powerful to show that it's not just Jasmine that we can get this with. But when we had the friends come over to have dinner with us, and they had that child jumping in a spare bedroom, because that, I think, is genius in how you responded to that. And it's creative, but it's so simple, and it really does work. So we had, I don't know how old the child was, I can't remember, but they were jumping in a spare bedroom
the bed.
Yeah. And then
yeah, so I just walked in, and then they're jumping on the bed. It's actually our bedroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on our bed.
Okay.
Yeah, wreaking havoc. Says the authoritarian parent.
So disrespectful. How dare they? No.
Yeah, I took out my paddle.
Yeah.
As a conscious parent, I have the right to paddle your kids, but I will do it mindfully. No, I do not. I apologize for that. In response to what you said, because I have an example, I have an article that I want to read in the book that has to do with that. But my response was, and this is a response I've thrown out there for some of you who are familiar with it already. As the child was jumping on the bed, I walked over to the child and said, "Oh my goodness, looks like you're having so much fun. Can I jump too?" And she said, yeah, she's jumping on my bed. I said, awesome. So I reached out my hand, and she placed her hands on mine, and we were jumping. She was on the bed, I was on the floor. Then I said, "Hey, I want to have more fun. Can we jump over here and jump together?" And she said, yeah. All it took was said more fun. And then she got off the bed, and we moved over to a rug, and we started jumping, had fun. I said, Then I said, "Hey, let's go check out what the kids are doing out there." She goes, "Yeah, let's go check it out." Hand in hand, we walked out together. The paddle was still on the wall. I never had to use it. You see? I have another example
The
related to
battle
what you
is for
said.
the parents, Khanh Tran, not for the children.
Speaking of for the parents, of the parents, this is a good segue into this.
I'm psychic because I don't even know what he's presenting. I just go with the flow.
I like to surprise her and then watch her respond by giving an example spontaneously. It makes it more natural because I'm unnatural.
I can't keep up with structure anyway. So
this title of this part of the book is called Self-Imposed Discipline. Self-imposed. I think you will appreciate this. If you don't, learn to. Okay. The implementation of timeout is best used. I'm going to teach you how to use timeout. This is the best way to do it. I did this to Jasmine when it was a situation when I used timeout. Okay. The implementation of timeout is best used when the parent is about to have a tantrum, which includes when the parent is about to preach. The moment you feel like you're about to preach, use timeout. And this is how this works. The parent could start with the following comments before putting themselves into timeout. Listen to the language, and this is why this works. Observational knowledge. Learning all the time, let me tell you. It creeps me out. Oh, for those who don't know, there's an infant in here. And she's gazing at me. Man, what a head start.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know? Stay focused. Stay focused. Here we go. I feel like this is what you say to the child before you put yourself in timeout. I feel like I may say or do things to you that would hurt your feelings at this moment. It is clear to me that I am upset. So I will place myself in timeout for 5 minutes until I feel calmer. After I am done, I will come back and look forward to having you help me to understand how I can manage my emotions. Now, the amount of minutes depends on the age of the child. So if the child is 9, you have to put yourself in timeout for 9 minutes. Check this out. We dare say that this would be quite an unusual response coming from any parent. For some parents, they may deem this approach to be giving the child too much power over the parent. But as a conscious parent, the practice could potentially expand the child's perspective because she has the option of assisting the parent. This is more about learning to manage emotions and behaviors by teaching the parent to behave. This would be, in effect, a good way to teach a child how to pay attention and remain calm while the parent is in timeout. It also gives the child an opportunity to consider how she is to help the parent. She is actually herself in timeout. But this is real thinking. The traditional
without
way,
shame, without guilt, without being diminished in any way, but empowered to be better. Not just us. They're empowering themselves to be better. Okay, sorry, that just came up.
The child considers how the parent manages emotions and how to properly deal with them. The point in all of this is that the child is put in a position of learning and teaching. If the parent is expecting the child to show more self-control, then give the child permission to demonstrate it by having her teach what self-control looks like. Remember, to feel good is to be good. To be in the position of teaching the parent, the child will feel good and confident in herself. And her confidence gives her a boost in maturity. Also, by teaching the parent, it helps her feel good because it is helping her parent, someone she loves and wants to support. There is no limit to what a child can learn because she will always want to love her parent. And to help the parent is to be loving. Approaching it in this way can help the child develop higher order thinking that enhances more creative and innovative ways of problem solving. We are often trying to get the child to consider her feelings and thoughts, but we do not allow her the opportunity to really consider her feelings and thoughts because we put her in timeout while she's frustrated. We rely on the use of guilt and shame as a means of pressuring her into behaving. We are constantly correcting her as if she is inadequate. And because we frequently correct her, she feels inadequate. To help her feel adequate, we leave her, put her in a position where she shows us what adequacy or how adequacy is embodied, what it looks like.
In behavior suppression, making a child not engage in that behavior, it is not learning. They don't know why that behavior cannot be, because we described it for 30 minutes doesn't mean that they know so. There's no ability to understand, oh, my parents telling me I can't do this, so I won't do it in front of them. Right? So it is very superficial, not effective, and it diminishes their soul and their confidence and their willingness to learn and grow. It stunts the child, actually.
You make a distinction once more between self-suppression and self-regulation.
Mhm.
Your punishment will work. They will suppress the behavior. But the thinking is not as deep as you would like.
And they don't know how to cope with their emotions any better. If anything, is it worse now? Now I have shame and guilt on top of feeling angry, and the issue is still unresolved. The behavior changes nothing. And I want to show an example of timeout for me. But what I was so surprised was by the immense compassion. Now, I'm very expressive. I'm Brazilian. I am not Asian. My emotions are right here, right? And emotions come in a fraction of a second. We had this beautiful house, chocolate color flooring, and I go into Jasmine's room with her permission, and she had spilled a lime green nail polish on my hardwood floors. There's things that get to me because I am really emotional and reactive. I felt the volcano, right? Like showing up. My full Hispanic background was awakened and alive, and we don't speak softly, right? And I knew I was going to lose it, and I was going to lose it. I was going to throw a biggest tantrum my daughter had ever seen, right? Over nail polish. Now you look back and like, what? No. But nonetheless, emotions were emotions. They showed up. And I looked at and she was looking at me, and she already had the look of horror in her face, right? Because she knew I was really angry. And I said, Jasmine, I am going to my room, and I'm going to put myself in timeout. When I'm calm, I'll come in, and we can clean this. We'll figure out how to clean it. But so I went to my room. Now 1 minute passed. Now I was really upset with myself about being upset. Like that helps, right? Like all the parenting, my own parenting that was done to me, right? I have the shame and the guilt, and then I'm still angry, and I'm still thinking, I'm all over the place. She was so little. She came in, sat next to me in my bed. She was so kind. She put her hand around my back, and I couldn't go that far. She's so tiny. She patted me and she said, "Mom, it's gonna be okay." You know, and when I think about, we are not so compassionate back when they commit an error, right? Like, uh, we are so critical because we've been criticized ourselves, we've been judged, right? Like, we just keep giving back. It keeps running downhill, right? You know the saying. I'm not cursing yet. So, but the immense compassion in her eyes and in her little body was so powerful. It immediately settled me. It immediately settled me. And I'm like, I'm missing the point here, right? Like, who cares about the nail polish in the floor at that point? Immense, very powerful experience. But she also felt empowered to comfort me, right? The fear was gone in her eyes, and I became calm. So, um, there's so much more to this than it can be expressed in those words. Those moments are really, really powerful. Um, so
Your witchery scares me because it leads into this. This is why it is important
Ooh, we passed.
to have the child teach us. Okay, if the roles were reversed and it was the parent who acts up and acts out, the child is more likely to show humanity in the role of teaching. Consider for a moment what a child would say to a parent when the parent messes up. Perhaps we are more inclined to hear, "It's okay, mama. It's okay, dada. Everybody makes mistakes." Frankly, this seems astonishingly confusing when we consider that we are the adults and supposed to be mature, and yet we resort to unsophisticated and improper ways of parenting. When the child messes up, we can come off quite unforgiving. Eventually, when the child feels inadequate enough, she acts accordingly to how she feels badly. She acts in accordance to how she felt she was treated by her parents, disrespectfully. Remember, the child's instinct is not to be critical and certainly not as judgmental. For example, we would never hear the child say, "What's wrong with you? Why are you so clumsy? You're being bad right now. You're making poor choices. Get your act together. You really are lazy. Go to your room right now and think about what you've done. Do it again, and I'll give you something to feel sorry about." So if the child would not respond in this way to us, why do we do it to them? We're coming to the end. There was much more, but this is it. I gave you some examples. Time out or is one way to approach, but time out should be a self-imposed consequence. There's also something called time in, also preferable. Please, whatever you do, don't use negative consequences, punishment. You have the power of speech. You have the power of connection. Get down on their level and wonder, and help them wonder. It will allow them to figure out, perhaps, why they did what they did, right? Without all the shame and guilt just hanging over their heads, without all the tension and pain stirring in their heart, without all the chaos that we introduce and indoctrinate going on in their brains. There's enough that the child has to contend with. It's called society, where they are bombarded with all kinds of negativity. That's not our position. That's not our place. We're supposed to be supportive. Nothing about what you do that is punishing the child is being supportive. You may have rationalized it as being supportive, but be careful. Not every intention is conscious. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Two things real quick.
Okay, sure.
At first, more of a statement with that last story that you shared with. Had you reacted in that moment, I did think about what a monumental moment you would have missed. And then I wonder how many of those moments we actually do miss because we don't see them for what they are, what they could be. And it's not something that you could plan there, but it was so foundational by removing emotion.
Wow, that's good foresight. Yeah.
Second thing is the story with Jasmine and the bike, because I starting to gather that our kids probably know us better than we know ourselves.
Very accurate.
And you guys kind of made mention that you're risk takers. You're willing to take that risk with a lot of things when it comes to her. Do you think that Jasmine knew the risk of riding in the winter on the bike, still chose to do it? Do you think she weighed the whole situation consciously before she did it?
I do believe so through her child mind. Perhaps from an intellectual perspective, from a cosmic perspective, it was probably not thought through, but it was not for me to determine. Remember, no determination. It was not for me to decide to introduce to her the threat or the risk of riding. It was for her to determine. It is her experience, her life.
And the hidden message in that, which is actually more powerful than anything, is I'm excited and I have needs. And sometimes I have to weigh my needs against the situation, which teach self-control and restriction in the future in a very effective way for her. Does that make sense? So it's better to make those risks when the parents are around so we can support her than when she's an adult. She has the ability to make much deeper evaluations of the situation in a way that just because she's excited about something, it may not be a good idea, right? Like, so yeah, there's so much more we always can talk. We can talk until the cows come home. Anybody else want to say anything or any questions? I know we passed time, but
yeah. Kind of piggyback off of his first question about how easily that could have been a missed opportunity. What if your children are teenagers now and you're trying to do conscious parenting, but you've messed it up all along? Is it too late?
Oh, that's a great question. There's this thing called plasticity. We even have it, although we old folks, right? Maybe it's not as activated. With a child, it's actually more activated, so, and it's more intense. So that's why they're able to learn and adapt to the situation real quick. It is not too late. What would expedite the process is dependent on us. The manifestation, the presentation. That presentation has to be supported by a whole heck of a lot of humility, compassion, gratitude, understanding, and humility. Yep.
And honesty in a way. Yeah, you're really being able to be vulnerable, which is very scary for us. I think we biologically wire for connection. And I'm going to give you a really quick, it's a made-up example. When we think someone gone through divorce and they are in their 40s, think of all the crazy things they do when they're in the next relationship, right? So a child is even more primed for that connection. So it may be rough in the beginning, but they want that connection with you. I work with adults there. I don't work with children. So I work with 18 and over. I have 50 and 60-year-olds that had horrible childhoods with their parents, abuse, sexual abuse, physical violence, everything. and they still want that connection with their parent. At 50, they're still being violated with words and criticism, and they still hang around their parents. We still want to be validated and loved and accepted. So the connectivity is the most powerful biological and emotional and spiritual drive that a human being has. We are social beings. We want to be connected. So no, it's not too late. But it really depends how able you are to be present with your teenagers now and to be honest and raw. And right, like I admit my faults to Jasmine all the time. When I screw up, I'm the first one to apologize. With a lot of tears because I can't cry on commotions. And it's extremely powerful. The mending is just as powerful. They're not messing up to begin with.
And when Jasmine screws up, I'm the first to apologize. Mm-hmm. That's conscious parenting. Mm-hmm. So when she screws up, I may be inclined to say, Jasmine, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm missing something here. I'm not understanding. Can you help me? Because she just cut the curtains, all right? Is there anything I can do to help you? Is there anything? Can I get you anything that you can cut with instead of, I messed up. I should have known. I realize now. So when I mess up, I apologize first. When Jasmine messes up, I too apologize first.
Because you're teaching them responsibility, right?
It's a different way, huh? I mean, it's strange.
It's incredibly powerful. You can see turnarounds almost immediately. But fears. Yeah.
Courtney, there's a whole chapter on pride.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, bookends your humility. I love that. Yep, you caught that. Yes, there's a whole chapter on pride itself. It's a projection. So you read that, you probably say, "Oh, Dr. Tran, interesting."
Just a general question of parenting overall. I've had conversations with people, and well, kind of two parts. You were mentioning in I think the session one that conscious parenting is somewhere around 20 years old now as far as being known and kind of talked about and practiced. So is there any data that you're aware of showing results that in our culture we're really obsessed with scientific studies showing outcomes?
There's a single study in the other room.
Right.
She's 15.
So, and on top of that, though, someone might argue, well, it's because of her genes, right? Because of YouTube, right? Yeah. So another thing that comes to mind is things I've heard with twin studies. Mm-hmm. I think it was in the 70s when they conducted a study. I don't know how long they did it, but and so a lot of people have this assumption or conclusion that parenting doesn't really matter that much because in those twin studies it showed like they had basics outcomes in certain ways, whatnot. Could you guys speak to those briefly? I know that's a lot of information I just asked for, but
the important part about the twin study you refer to is they were in the 70s. Now they have all kinds of measures. Yeah. There are current twin studies that show actually genetics and nurture.
And you can imagine the parenting. Both parentings are actually probably very similar, even though completely different families, right? In the 70s. I think that the other piece is, why don't each parent do their own study if they can embody this and watch the result in vivo in front of their eyeballs? There's nothing more powerful than that. Better than a paper study, right? Like it's something that you read.
It would make more sense if you did what we suggested. I mean, that's all we do. That's all we do.
And what we are today, it is not our genetics. Well, there's a little bit of that, but we both come from very messed up families. In 2001, I was a very different human being than I am today. So my genetics was then this is more mindfulness. There's some things I haven't been able to eradicate, but I have changed. You would not recognize me. Yeah,
That's what
23 years ago.
That's what conscious parenting can do. When I say it's a journey, I mean it in every way. Specifically, the journey within.
Yeah. I'm still being transformed with every experience. So it's not genetics. I will guarantee you. If you see our family, I have criminals in my side. So just saying. So
Who?
Too many to count.
Oh, okay.
I have a mugshot on my.
To your point,
Yeah, there's no more powerful data and research than the one you do it on yourself and you watch. Well, thank you so much. This was lovely.